Okay, today we're going to be talking about proportions. As you can see from the statement, a proportion is simply a statement that two ratios are equal. It can be written in two ways, as two equal fractions, which is the most common, or using a colon. AB is equal to CD. The following proportion is read as 20 is to 25, as 4 is to 5. In problem-solving proportions, we can use cross products to test whether two ratios are equal to form a proportion. Similar to like the butterfly method, you might have called it in elementary school, to determine if two fractions are equivalent or equal in value. So again, if you look at the example below, we have 20 over 25 and 4 over 5. If we cross multiplied, 5 times 20 is 100, and 25 times 4 is 100, so they are equivalent. We can also use what's called the property of 1, which you have heard many a time, which just means whatever you do to the top or the numerator, you do to the denominator, you do to the bottom. So on this problem, how do I go from 20 to 4? You divide by 5. 20 divided by 5 is 4. Whatever you do to the numerator, you do to the denominator, and 25 divided by 5 is 5. Again, this is called the property of 1 because 5 divided by 5 is 1. These numbers were divided technically by 1, but we just use a different number to make them look different. It's still equal in value, again, which we can cross multiply. We still get 100 over 100, so we know that these are equivalent. All right, great. So, on 1 and 2, they've asked us to show or to prove if they are equivalent or not. So on number 1, I'm going to cross multiply. 7 times 34 is 238. And 8 times 28 is 224. So these, in fact, are not equivalent. Another way I've checked it, how do I go to 7 to 28? Times 4, what do we do at the top? 8 times 4 is not 34, it's 32. So again, this is not equivalent. Let's do number 2. First, let's cross multiply. 7 times 15 is 105. 20 times 5 is 100. So they are not equivalent. These are not equivalent ratios. Another way to check this is how do I go from 15 to 5? Let's go this way. How do I go from 5 to 15 times 3? 3 times 7 is 21, not 20. So again, these are not equivalent. All right. Now, solve each proportion. I'm on number 5 down below. So we're going to start on 5 and 6 because they're relatively easy. There's on proportions, you can always cross multiply, but if you can't cross multiply some of them, you can do property of 1. So let's do property of 1 on this one. How do I go from 5 to 35? That's right, times 7. Whatever you do to the denominator, you do to the numerator. What's 8 times 7? 56, so x equals 56. If I were to cross multiply, I would do 8 times 35, which is 280. And then 5 times x, which is 5x. Again, if I multiply a constant by a variable, constant is a number by itself. By a variable, I'm combining those, so I get 5x. Now this becomes a simple one-step equation. I need to isolate the variable. So what am I doing? I'm multiplying by 5. What's the inverse, or the opposite of multiplying by 5, is dividing by 5. Whatever you do to the right side, do to the left side to keep it equal. Okay. Just like in a fraction, whatever you do property of 1, whatever you do to the top, you do the bottom. On an equation, whatever you do to the right side, you do to the left side. So 5 divided by 5 cancels out. Gives you 1, and 1 times x is x. And then 280 divided by 5, still going to give you 56. So again, if you look at number 5, sometimes you can, property of 1, how do I go from 5 to 35? Times 7. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. 8 times 7 is 56. Or we can cross multiply. 5 times x is 5x. 8 times 35 is 280. And then what you're really asking is 5 times what equals 280? But to solve it algebraically, divide by 5, and you get x equals 56. Let's do number 6 now. Now, I have my variable on the left, so I'm going to say, how do I go from 18 to 12? Some of you will know this. It's times 2/3, because 18 times 2 is 36. 36 divided by 3 is 12, so it's times 2/3. 6 times 2/3, 6 times 2 is 12. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Now, there are multiple ways to doing this one. Some of you might say, how do I go from 18 to 6? Because my variable's on top. How do I go from 18 to 6? That's right, divide by 3. The great thing about solving proportions, you just look for the easy way to do it. And a proportion, or like equivalent fractions, whatever I do to the right side, that's right, you do the left side. 18 divided by 3 is 6. 12 divided by 3 is also 4. All right, one last way of doing it is cross multiplication. 12 times 6 is 72. 8 times 18 is 18a. Isolate the variable. I'm multiplying by 18. The inverse is dividing by 18. Cancels out because 18 divided by 18 is 1, and 1 times a is a. Whatever you do to the right side, you do to the left side, and 72 divided by 18 is still 4. So no matter how we solve that, we still got 4, which is a good sign. All right, now we're going to do 9 and 10. Now 9 and 10 are a little more complicated, but not too much. Okay. On 9, instead of having a single variable, we have a coefficient. A coefficient is a number in front of the variable. So we have 20 over 35 equals 2x over 7. So first, let's see, how do we want to do it? How do I go from 7? Okay, sorry. So how do I go from 7 to 35 times 5? Whatever we do to the bottom denominator, we do to the numerator. So 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times what equals 20? 2. So our answer, x equals 2. But let's check it to make sure I didn't screw up. Okay? Let's cross multiply. Now most of you, when first starting off, this is going to be the easiest way to solve it. So if you didn't understand what I did earlier, pay attention. 7 times 20 is 140. And then I'm going to cross multiply. 2x times 35 is 70x. So I multiply my coefficient and my constant. 2 times 35 is 70, and it keeps the x. So what you have here is 70x equals 140. So what you're really just saying is 70 times what equals 140, but to solve it algebraically, isolate the variable, get the x alone. What am I doing? I'm multiplying by 70. What's the inverse or opposite of multiplying by 70? Dividing by 70. What if you do the right side? You do the left side. And so what you're left with is x equals 2. And that's our answer. Again, if we plug it back in here, now again, remember, times 5 times 5. So you have 2 times 5 is 10. But what about that x? 10 times what equals 20? It's still 2. All right, let's do the last one. Now, let's go ahead and do it the cross multiplication. So 2 times 22 is 44. And then 1, now this is, I'm going to solve it up here, 1 times c minus 5. I have to use distributive property on this, meaning I have to multiply the 1 times the c and the 1 times the negative 5. So that gives me, of course it's times 1, so it doesn't change. Okay, I'm isolating the variable, so I'm subtracting 5. What's the inverse, opposite of subtracting 5? Adding 5. Whatever you do to the right side, you do to the left side, because those cancel out. And that gives you C equals 49. 49 equals C. Why is that? So again, we're going to let me erase all of this. Now this one is an easier one to visualize. How do I go from 1 to 2? That's right, times 2. Now what's 22 times, whatever you do the left side, you do the right side. What's 22 times 2? 44. So why isn't that our answer? Because I need something, if you notice on the bottom, that if I plug in for C, I will get 44. So why is it 49? What's 49 minus 5? You guessed it, 44. That's why this is our answer for 10. All right. You can also have proportions and word problems. So we're going to go ahead and you can see some of the problems we did on 9 and 10. Let's look at 13. Your doctor has prescribed two teaspoons of medicine to be taken every 6 hours. How much medicine will you have taken in 4 days? So for 13, you can see that I'm going to take 2 teaspoons every 6 hours. So first, let's figure out how many teaspoons am I going to take in 1 day. Now, I'm not going to put one day down here because I need my units to be the same. This says hours. This needs to say hours. So for 1 day, there's how many hours? That's right. 24. So how many teaspoons am I going to take? Well, how do I go from 6 to 24? Times 4. So, and again, you're assuming that you're going to wake up in the middle of the night, or if you go to school or if you're at work, you're still going to, every 6 hours, you're going to take your medicine, regardless of what you're doing or where you're at. So 6 times 4 equals 24. Whatever you do the bottom, you do the top. That means you're going to take 8 teaspoons per day. So if you're taking 8 teaspoons per day, and you're doing it for 4 days, all we're going to do is multiply 4 times 8, and we're going to get 32 teaspoons for all 4 days. Okay, that's 13. Let's look at number 14. 2 out of every 7 people at a particular high school play in the band. If the school had 2 out of every 7 people at a particular high school band play in the band, sorry about that. If the school had 742 students, how many of them are in the band? So I'm going to open up a new page. 2 people played in the band out of 7 total. What if there were 742 total people in the band? How many would play, or 442 total people in the school, how many would play in the band? So what I'm going to ask is, how do I go from 7 to 742? If you don't know, we can divide, and we're going to get 106. So I'm multiplying by 106 to go from 7 to 742. Now you might ask before I finish this off, why did I put 742 on the bottom? Because I had total on the bottom on the left side, so I'm going to keep total students on the bottom on the right side. That way we can keep things set up appropriately, like to like. Total students on the bottom and players in the band on the top. Now, I could set it up differently, but if I cross multiply, I would still get the same answer. So again, we said, how do I go from 7 to 742 times 106? Whatever you do the bottom, you do the top, and 2 times 106 is, you guessed it, 212 students. All right. So this has been our lessons and examples on setting up and solving proportions. I hope this helped. If you need anything else or clarification or more practice problems, please email me at jhewlett@leisd.ws. Thank you.